So I recorded the gameplay footage of this episode directly after the end of last episode. And if you couldn't tell, I was pretty frustrated at the end of that game. And so maybe not the best decision to record this, because I made a decision here in this recording that if I could start over again, I don't know if I would have. I made the decision to end off the season today. We're 5-8. We're out of the playoff hunt at this point, and we are not really vying for a top pick either. Not that we have our first round pick anyway. So I made the decision to just end off season 2 today. I think we have enough of a sample size to kind of understand what this year 2 team is, where we need to improve and such. I think if I would have recorded this now as I'm editing it, I think I probably would have tried to get one more spotlight game out of the season so we didn't end on that terrible Bills game. But yeah, I was done after that episode. I was just so frustrated at Blatchford in particular, and just kind of that game in general. But we're going to start today with a loss. They're going to look at some of the stats here. Bijan did not get nearly as involved as you would have liked. Javier Hendricks got himself a touchdown, which is nice to see from the rookie receiver. Got a few sacks in there as well, but not enough to get the win over the division rival. Game 2 here out of 4 will be against the Los Angeles Rams. They've got James Lewis, a rookie quarterback, at the helm. So let's hop into this game. We're going to get on the board first here in this one and build ourselves a bit of a lead, but LA shortens the gap. We've got ourselves a multi-touchdown lead, but it is gone just like that. And we're going to lose 32-29 in this game. Just not the way you want to start this episode. 2 games out of 4 gone. We're 0-2. Again, I already said it this episode, but we don't have a first round pick. We really have no incentive to lose. So I'd like to pick up a couple of wins here to end off the season, but it's just not happening. A couple touchdowns for Bijan and Gabe Davis in this game. But things aren't going to get any easier going forward here, as next opponent on the board for us is the Buffalo Bills. And yeah, this is just the team that made me want to end the season. So yeah, that defense is sick. Let's see if we can maybe get some revenge on the road today, though. But not a good start for it, that's for sure. And we have yet to even just put a offensive print on this game at all. Here we do, so a little bit late, but ultimately just not nearly enough. I think we scored 10 points in both of these games against the Bills, if I remember right. So just not very good. Blatchford, no touchdowns and a pick is obviously not great. I think we found our rival for year 3. We have to come out and have a good game against the Bills next year, for sure. I think that's got to be amongst the top of our priorities. Trevor Lawrence and the Jaguars are the only thing standing between us and ending the season on a 5-game losing streak. Can we come out victorious? Trading touchdowns early in this game. Jacksonville leads by 7 going into the half. We're making things interesting here in the second half. (37-31) is going to be the final score. Thought for a moment we could pull it off, but Jacksonville comes away victorious. And you go 0-4 on the episode, man. I mean, this wasn't the easiest slate of games by any means, but 0-4. This team was not good. I thought for sure at some point in the season we were going to hit our season goal of 7 wins. We end up with 5, man. 5-12 here in season 2. Not nearly the season I was hoping on having. And that gives us a lot of room to improve here in the offseason. We've got to make some changes for sure. There's already been comments about one of the positions we need to change, linebacker, which I totally agree with. But there's much more than even just that. We need to get some upgrades across both sides of the ball, really, if we want to have a year 3 jump, which I absolutely do. We got a really good young quarterback. We got to make the most of him. So now we've got ourselves a bunch of upgrades here to end off the season, kind of our final batch. I held off on all the upgrades to the end, so we've got 4 weeks worth here. So quite a few players to go through, but in the end, I'd say I was slightly disappointed in this team. If you think about it, we had a 4-game win streak. We were 1-12 in all the other games a part of that win streak. I didn't think we were going to be this bad. There was maybe some outside hype that we could maybe even be a playoff team. I didn't see us as that, but man, I didn't see us as 5-12 either. Again, being 1-12 outside of one little month-long stretch. So a little bit of a wake-up call that things need to change here in Memphis in the offseason, and I'm really excited to get to that offseason and give us a chance to make those changes. I think we have a lot of guys on our team that are kind of solid, but we could upgrade on, and that's going to be my mentality. We don't want solid here. We want good, impactful players. That's what's going to help you, become a playoff team, and we have aspirations even further than that down the road. Unfortunate here that a guy like Charlie Kyle couldn't get more upgrades to his overall. Going out for a few weeks on the offensive line is certainly going to impact that. Offensive linemen, they really desperately need snaps to upgrade. And unlike in previous Maddens, you don't get XP for training when you're injured. That was a thing that you could do in previous Maddens, just not the case this time around in the game, which I think is a good change. Like if you're injured, you could maybe study the playbook, but I don't know if you should be getting XP for doing, that level of activity. But like I said, we've got some really good players on the team, some that we're upgrading here in the tail end, but we've also got plenty of room to improve. Taking a look at where the standings would be in the end, the Chiefs have the best record in the league. The Browns have the worst by a mile, and then we're got like a 5-way tie here, so we could pick anywhere between 2nd and 6th, or shall I say, the Eagles will be picking in that range because they have our first-round pick. This late collapse hurts even more because we're giving our pick to Philly here. It's now time to talk some stats here for the team. Just go player by player and talk about what I thought about their season and how I think about that position going forward. Of course, you start with the quarterback position, where we drafted Kevin Blatchford, and his rookie year, I don't know why I'm going to this because he only has 1 year here, but it was certainly up and down. Unfortunately, the last time we saw him last episode was certainly his worst game of his rookie year, and so that's not exactly the spotlight game you'd like to end on with him, but we saw what he could be when he was on his game as well throughout the year. That 4-game win streak was really brought on by his great play in that stretch. And at the end of the day, for a rookie, as long as you can show those moments of, hey, this is who I can be going forward, it doesn't have to be consistent in your rookie year. I think there's a lot of high expectations on a player when they are, a generational talent at their position. But at the end of the day, quarterback's tough to play, even when you are generational. And so not perfect by any means, and I need him to play better going forward, but a very promising rookie year. If we can get rid of some of those interceptions, you know, I think he had 7, maybe 8 of those in 2 games. You know what I'm talking about? So he wasn't terrible overall taking care of the ball. Just needs to avoid the terrible games, honestly. I think his average game was even good, and then he had the really good games. If we can get rid of those terrible games, I think we've got ourselves somebody that can really prove to be one of the top at his position sooner rather than later. It just depends on when he can clean that up. Rushing wise, he also ran 43 times. I don't know why the 49ers playbook, I guess, was still built on the possibility of Trey Lance being there for this game, but you know, it's Brock Purdy. I don't know why he's running 43 times here, but there you have it. Bijan, I think, was much improved in year 2, and I think that's just a product of a better offense overall. He also didn't miss time this year. He was healthy for all 17 games, and you love to see it. Ended up getting pretty much a full yard more per carry than last year. 1,300 yards on the ground with 16 touchdowns, plus 9 from last year. 22 more broken tackles, increased that by a ton. No fumbles, just better in every way. More durable, better per carry, better at scoring, better at breaking tackles, better at taking care of the ball. All across the board, Bijan was a stud. And then you add in the fact that he was much better through the air as well. I mean, you're talking about a combined 1,900 yards and 23 touchdowns from this player for us this year. Offense is built around him, and he showed us why, because he is an insane player. I thought he had a good rookie year for sure, but just took it to another level this year, and I'm excited to have him as kind of this focal point of the offense going forward. Keaton Mitchell, limited role, wasn't actually very good on the 3 yards per carry. I think we might actually try to upgrade on the RB2 role this year, perhaps. It's not a top priority for me, but I'm going to keep my eye on it just because 3 yards of carry is not very good. Receiving wise, Gabe Davis ends up with 1,200 yards and 10 touchdowns on the year. That is his first career year over 1,000 yards. It's also his first year as a wide receiver 1, and I think he took well to the role. 93 catches, 10 touchdowns, which is also his career high. 1 year in, I am happy with that move. I don't remember really any drops from him in the spotlight games throughout the year, so he's a good, dependable player. I wanted somebody that I felt like we could depend on to be a wide receiver 1, and Gabe Davis fit that role perfectly. He's not this, you know, insane high upside playmaker, but he's a dependable guy, and he proved to be that. Javier Hendricks, man, oh man, is there drops? I don't think you can count drops, but this guy, I need him to be better with the drops next year. As much as he made some good plays at times and still ends up being, you know, 1,000-yard receiver in his rookie year, which is a good start to his career. Just too many drops for me. And so still, you know, pretty secure in having a role for us next year as our slot receiver. But if he wants to kind of be viewed as the slot of this team for kind of the duration of this franchise series, gonna need to work on the hands for my guy. Kevin Williamson, a late round pick that turned in what I think is a pretty dang productive year for us. Ends up with 700 yards, which for a rookie tight end, I think is pretty dang good. 4 touchdowns as well. He's another guy who's going to have a role on our team next year for sure. I don't imagine us really looking for a new starter. So Williamson will be playing. And if we do end up, I don't know, maybe there's a really good tight end on the market or in the draft, he'll at least get some snaps at tight end too. But like I said, I'm still planning on him being wide receiver 1. After that, you got Tyquan Thornton here, who had only 29 catches for 318 yards. That's kind of low for me for your wide receiver 3. Noah Brown had 180 yards as well. But I definitely think wide receiver 3 is a position that we can look to maybe try someone else with. You know, we've had Tyquan Thornton for a couple years. I mean, he was much more of a priority in the offense last year, and you saw it with 683 and a touchdown, but I think it might be time to look for somebody else. Thornton had a tough time holding on to the ball through traffic at times in our spotlight games. Carlos Roman caught a touchdown here, as did Keaton Mitchell. Roman's just, your fullback. I think he did a solid job at that this year. Blocking wise, Charlie Kyle ends up allowing 16 sacks, and that is with missing some time as well. And so we talked a lot about how bad Remmers was last year. Charlie Kyle had a rough year one for sure. I do think a lot of his sacks were actually Kevin Blatchford's fault. I don't know how many I would actually attribute to him versus Blatchford, but he also had some just sim games where he was allowing multiple sacks. So I'm hoping for a big step up from Kyle, because we took him with a top 10 pick. I touted him as looking like the best tackle I'd ever seen in the game. He just didn't play like it much, and so we got to see an improvement in year two. I think once that morale resets, he'll be looking pretty good. And hopefully he can be much improved. But again, Blatchford, I think, is a big reason for a lot of these sacks as well. And so as much as you could blame some linemen, I need Blatchford to have some better pocket awareness next year as well. Harris Johnson allows 12 compared to last year. I think it was only 10. Yep, it was that. Defensively, 148 tackles on the year for Mac Wilson, which you like to see. 134 for Devin Bush, who isn't a pending free agent. He wants to be paid like an edge rusher because Madden needs to get his crap together, and I'm not willing to pay him as an edge rusher. And then Bryce Hall at the slot corner also got over 100 tackles as well. TFL wise, 25 for Jalen Carter, along with 15 and a half sacks. He has absolutely been a difference maker, and we just went over the standings and how we're missing a pick that's going to be between 2 and 5. Well, this is the caliber of player that we got in exchange for that pick, who has just been insane in his first 2 years. So when you remember that the reason that we don't have that pick is because of a guy like Jalen Carter, then you're a little bit less sad that you don't have it. Josh Uche had double-digit sacks this year as well, with 24 TFLs, 21 TFLs, and 8.5 sacks for Anthony Jennings. Still a very good year, but just comparing him to last year, where he had 30 TFLs and 13.5, it was certainly a step down, but still productive for sure. And then Uche was improved over last year for sure. You gotta love that. Plus 6 TFLs, doubling his sack output for us, getting back to the double digits, which is what he had coming into the year. So when you look at that, you might not think of edge as a top tier need for us. I just think it's still a position that we could improve upon, just because a guy like Anthony Jennings, he's 27 now, and he's just not going to get much better with the way Madden does its XP. Josh Uche, kind of the same. I think last year, if I had to say only one of them was going to be a starter, it would have been Anthony Jennings, because he was coming off an insane year. This time, I'd say probably Josh Uche is more secure in his starting edge spots. Keith Givens had some good moments for us. He had half of his sacks in one game, though, so I think this is definitely, thank you for your service this year. We signed him to a 1-year deal. I think maybe it was a 2. Let's look at his contract here. It was just a 1-year deal. Thank you for your service, but we're probably looking towards a replacement here. And then that was it. Our starting 4 defensive linemen all had at least 7 sacks, which is good. Bush was certainly productive for us, and I wish he wasn't asking to be paid as an edge, or else I'd probably bring him back. But unfortunately, he is asking to be paid as an edge. Interceptions wise, we got 5 from Christian Gonzalez, who has had at least 5 in now each of his first 2 years in the league, which you'll love to see it. Raised his deflections up into the double digits this year as well. He's been everything I could have hoped for when we had him be one of our 4 big cornerstone pieces from episode 1. Our 2 defensive guys have absolutely come through with that, and obviously we looked at Bijan, who has as well. So no complaints over the guys that we've chosen to be our cornerstone players. Grant Delpit, he was one of the big, we only have a limited amount of guys that we can sign in free agency over 80 overall. Chose to spend one of those on him, and I did not regret it at all. Career high in interceptions. He was exactly the kind of playmaker that I was hoping that he would be when we signed him. It's hard to be a playmaker at safety sometimes in Madden. Those guys don't get a ton of chances to make plays, and he made the most of his chances. Of course, he did have 3 of his interceptions in one game, but like even in preseason, he was intercepting the ball. I just really like what I saw from Grant Delpit throughout the year. Julian Blackman was a guy we kind of signed as a stopgap safety. If he's back again next year, he is on a 2-year deal. If he's starting again next year, I am totally fine with it. I also would not be opposed to upgrading over that spot. And then Demir Hale, 6th-round rookie, starting from day 1 after an impressive preseason, ends up, despite with his 52 catching with 3 interceptions this year, he's definitely going to be playing for us next year. I commented last episode, that my favorite player that's possible pick for us is a corner in this draft, and that's nothing to do with Demir Hale's play. I just think he's the best player that could be available. So Demir might be sliding over to the slot next year. That's certainly a possibility. It'll be interesting to see how he plays there, but we'd have just a giant trio corners with everybody at least 6'2" and 200 pounds if we were ended up going corner with that first pick. But if we don't, and it's Hale, Gonzalez, and Hall once more, I'm not sad at all. Hall, of course, no picks for us. Did have 7 deflections, which was 2nd on the team. He made some plays as well. Of course, again, had over 100 tackles. So he's another guy, kind of like I talked about with Blackman, where he's on a 2-year deal. If he spends his 2nd year starting for us as well, I'm totally fine, but I'm also not afraid to upgrade that position either. Let's go through now and talk team stats just to see where it is we really need to focus here on the offseason with our draft picks and in free agency as well. You take a look at total offense. We were kind of in the middle of the pack here throughout the league. Passing wise, we were, looks like towards maybe the very back half of the top 10 there. Rushing wise, it was something that I think we were probably towards the very bottom of the bottom 10, so maybe high 20s there. Points per game, another thing that we're kind of in the middle of the pack. As you're seeing, we didn't really stand out anywhere. We also just kind of weren't at the bottom of the league, so very middle of the pack offense. You can improve on it for sure, but doesn't look like offense necessarily was the reason that we were 5-12, because middle of the pack, you'd expect more 7-10, 8-9, 9-8, but we were not that. Obviously, we were 5-12. So let's switch now to the defense, and we were the 32nd defense in total yards allowed per game. We need to find ways to improve our defense in the offseason. Against the pass, we were the worst in the league by 400 yards. Against the rush, we were more close to the middle of the pack, but a little bit below average there. In terms of allowing points, 3rd worst in the league. Sacks, we were actually up there. It wasn't our ability to get pressure on the quarterback that made us bad. It was when we didn't get pressure on the quarterback, we were not making plays in the secondary. That was our problem here. Fumbles, we were the only team who only forced 1 fumble this year, surprisingly enough. Interceptions, we were tied for the NFL's best. So we did a really good job forcing turnovers. We did a really good job sacking the quarterback. But when we weren't making the big plays, the other team was gouging us. There were no kind of just, oh, solid, we stopped them. On a drive-to-drive basis, we were just shutting the team down. There wasn't a lot of that. We were getting the drive killers, right? The sacks and the interceptions, or we were allowing points. That was pretty much what we were doing. So I want a little bit more consistency next year. And that's what we're going to be looking for. In terms of third down percentage, we were towards the bottom of the league. That looks like about 6th or 7th worst there. Fourth downs, we were 4th worst in the league. So don't love that red zone efficiency. We were the least efficient offense in all of football when it came to the red zone. Couldn't even get a touchdown half the time. And defensively, looks like we were closer to middle of the pack. I believe that was something that we were really good at in year 1. So that regressed pretty hard. Penalties, we're always going to lead the league in that because of all the games that we watch. Turnovers. Turnover difference. I think we're going to actually not be terrible here. We turn the ball over a lot and we force a lot of turnovers. We end up +3. Giveaways, we were, I would guess, like tied for 10th is what that would be. In terms of interceptions, pretty much kind of the same. Fumbles lost. Might not have lost very many fumbles this year at all. We only lost 1 fumble. That's pretty good. And then takeaways, top 5 in football. That you love to see. There's one thing that this team was good at. I think it was creating big plays. I think on both sides of the ball. We just weren't consistent enough. You can't rely on that unless you're like the best in the league at it. You know what I mean? And there you have it. So I'd love to hear what you guys think our biggest positions of need are, especially after seeing kind of where our player stats and our team stats are. I have an idea of some positions that I definitely want to improve, but I always love to hear the input of the other people that are watching, because I'm not the only one watching these games. You all are too, of course. And so some others might have different takes than I do on them. I've taken a look at, every round in the draft now, and I'm excited to next episode preview that. But the last thing I really want to do is get through this playoff bracket here. We're not in it, of course, but let's see who is going to end up going to the Super Bowl this year, shall we? So we've got ourselves a Niners-Bengals Super Bowl this year. The Bengals as the 6th seed going all the way. The 1 seed both lost in their first playoff game, which is not something you typically see. The fact that there's no 1 or 2 seed in the Super Bowl. But before we simulate that game, let's go ahead and take a look at the yearly awards here. MVP goes to Patrick Mahomes with Coach of the Year, going to Mike McCarthy. We'll quickly go through the NFC first. Jalen Hurts, Aaron Donald, Leroy Abbott is your Offensive Rookie of the Year over on that side of the ball. Walter Douglas is Defensive Rookie. Hurts is also Best Quarterback. Swift, Best Running Back. Ayuk there wins his best position, and then Zach Martin, your Best O-Lineman. Aaron Donald there, Best D-Lineman. Gary at linebacker. Slay at corner. Gonzalez at kicker. Now to the AFC, Isaiah Pacheco wins Offensive Player of the Year. Bijan comes in 2nd place. Interesting. Von Miller will win Defensive Player of the Year. Jalen Carter in 3rd place. We had a couple of good candidacies for Players of the Year, but do we win either of the Rookies of the Year? No. Trent Pickard at quarterback wins it over Javier Hendricks. Blatchford wasn't even number 1 place on our team. And then Defensive Rookie of the Year, Hale ends up in 4th place. But Marquise Crawford, who was somebody that I really liked coming out of the draft, was my 3rd overall player. He ends up winning Defensive Rookie of the Year. Mahomes, Best Quarterback. Pacheco, Best Running Back. Chase, receiver. Trey Turner, Offensive Line is interesting. Carter wins 3rd place in the Best Defensive Lineman. Gonzalez, third place for best DB. Delpit in sixth. And then Ryland ends up second place for best kicker. So, those are your stats and awards for season 2 of our Memphis Thunderbirds franchise. Super Bowl winner for the season will be, drumroll as the simulator takes forever to simulate the week, it will be the San Francisco 49ers, the Brock Purdy as your MVP. The fact that the 49ers playbook ended up going all the way in simulation gives me hope that we can someday do it ourselves. But here's your season recap, and that is going to do it for this final episode of season 2. If you are excited for the off season, let me know by showing up for the next episode, which will be coming out soon. And I see you then.